The air crackled with the scent of honeysuckle and regret as Caleb stood at the edge of the family's Tennessee farm, the sunset bleeding red across the hills. He clutched the letter in his trembling hand, its words searing his heart. "You are no longer my son." 3 brothers, born on the same day, had returned home for a wedding, and now one was cast out for loving a man. Caleb, the eldest of the triplets by mere minutes, had always been the quiet one. 28, with his wire-rimmed glasses and soft-spoken demeanor, he was the family's dreamer, the one who sketched wildflowers in his notebook and read poetry under the oak tree. Elliot, his mirror image but rougher around the edges, was the protector, his flannel shirts and calloused hands a testament to years of baling hay and fixing fences. Nathan, the third, was the golden boy, muscular, charismatic, and always striving to please their father, Samuel, a man whose word was law in their small town of Willow Creek. The triplets had been inseparable since birth, their lives intertwined like the roots of the ancient sycamore that stood in the center of the family's sprawling farm. They shared everything: birthdays, secrets, and the weight of their father's expectations. Samuel, a widower since their mother died in childbirth, had raised them with an iron hand and a Bible verse for every misstep. "Family is God's design," he'd say, his voice booming like thunder. "You honor it, or you're nothing." This weekend was supposed to be a celebration. Elliot and Nathan, both 25, were bringing home their fiancés for a double wedding, a spectacle that had the whole town buzzing. Elliot's bride, Lila, a fiery redhead with a laugh that could light up a room, had won Samuel's approval instantly. Nathan's fiancée, Grace, with her sleek black hair and quiet grace, was the daughter of a local pastor, perfect match in Samuel's eyes. Caleb, though, had arrived with a different kind of news. He'd brought someone to not a bride, but a man. His name was Jamie, a soft-spoken artist from Nashville with warm brown eyes and a smile that made Caleb's heart ache. The moment Caleb introduced Jamie at the family's Sunday dinner, the room went silent. Samuel's fork clattered against his plate. "What is this?" he'd growled, his eyes narrowing at Jamie's hand resting lightly on Caleb's. The air grew heavy, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Elliot tried to crack a joke, but Nathan's face hardened, mirroring their father's disapproval. Lila and Grace exchanged uneasy glances, their joy dimmed by the storm brewing at the table. "Caleb, you know what the Bible says," Samuel said, his voice low but sharp enough to cut. "This ain't right. You bring shame to this family." Caleb's throat tightened. He'd spent years hiding who he was, burying his feelings under the weight of his father's expectations. But Jamie had changed everything. They'd met at an art gallery in Nashville, where Caleb's sketches had caught Jamie's eye. One conversation turned into late-night talks, stolen kisses, and a love that felt like coming home. For the first time, Caleb felt whole, but now, standing in his childhood home, he felt like a stranger. "I love him, Dad," Caleb said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's not shame. It's truth." Samuel's chair scraped back as he stood, his face red with fury. "Get out," he said. "You're no longer welcome here." The words hit like a fist. Caleb stumbled back, Jamie's hand steadying him. Elliot rose, his fists clenched, ready to defend his brother. But Nathan grabbed his arm. "Don't make it worse," Nathan hissed. Lila reached for Elliot's hand, her eyes pleading for peace, while Grace stared at her plate, silent. That night, Caleb and Jamie packed their bags and left for a motel in town. The farm, once a place of warmth and memories, now felt like a prison Caleb had escaped, but at what cost? As they drove away, Caleb glanced back at the sycamore tree, its branches swaying in the wind, and wondered if he'd ever see it again. The next morning, the town was alive with preparations for the double wedding. White tents dotted the farm's front lawn, and neighbors bustled about, carrying flowers and stringing lights. Elliot and Lila were radiant, their love a beacon in the chaos. Nathan and Grace, though more reserved, moved through the day with practiced smiles. But Caleb's absence hung over the family like a storm cloud. Elliot couldn't shake the image of Caleb's face as he'd left, the hurt in his eyes. He'd always been the one to protect his brothers, to stand up to their father's temper. But this time, he'd failed. "We should have done something," he told Lila as they sat on the porch, the stars blinking above. Caleb made his choice, Lila said softly, her hand resting on his. "But he's still your brother. You can still fight for him." Nathan, meanwhile, wrestled with his own guilt. He'd always been the one to follow the rules, to keep the peace. But seeing Caleb cast out had stirred something in him, a doubt he couldn't name. Was his father right? Was Caleb's love a sin? Or was the sin in turning away from family? As the wedding day approached, the town's whispers grew louder. Some supported Samuel's decision, quoting scripture and shaking their heads. Others, like Mrs. Harper, the town librarian, slipped Caleb a note at the motel. "You're always welcome at my table." The divide in Willow Creek mirrored the fracture in the family, and Caleb felt it keenly. Jamie, ever the optimist, tried to keep Caleb's spirits up. "We'll build our own family," he said, his fingers tracing Caleb's jaw. "One that loves us for who we are." But Caleb couldn't shake the ache of losing his brothers, his home, his past. The wedding day dawned bright and warm. The farm transformed into a vision of white lace and wildflowers. Elliot and Nathan stood at the altar, their brides radiant beside them. But as the vows were spoken, a figure appeared at the edge of the crowd. Caleb, alone, his eyes red but resolute. He hadn't come to disrupt. He'd come to see his brothers one last time. Elliot's heart lurched. He stepped forward, ignoring Samuel's glare, and pulled Caleb into a hug. "You're my brother," he whispered. "Always." Nathan hesitated, his loyalty torn, but Grace's gentle nudge pushed him forward. He clasped Caleb's hand, a silent apology in his eyes. Samuel's face darkened, but he said nothing. The town watched, holding its breath, as the brothers stood together, a fragile bridge between love and tradition. Caleb left before the reception, Jamie waiting for him in the car. As they drove away, Caleb felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, love could mend what had been broken. But the road ahead was uncertain, and the cost of being true to himself was only beginning to unfold. The days after the wedding were a blur of silence and distance. Caleb and Jamie settled into a small apartment in Nashville, a world away from the rolling hills of Willow Creek. The city buzzed with live music spilling from bars, lights painting the night sky, but Caleb carried the weight of his father's rejection like a stone in his chest. Every night, he dreamed of the sycamore tree, its branches reaching for him as if to pull him back home. He'd wake with a start, Jamie's steady breathing beside him the only anchor in the dark. "You okay?" Jamie would murmur, his hand finding Caleb's in the quiet. "I don't know," Caleb would answer, staring at the ceiling. "I thought I'd feel free, but I just feel lost." Jamie, with his endless patience, would pull Caleb close. "You're not lost. You're finding your way, and I'm right here with you." In Willow Creek, the farm felt emptier without Caleb's presence. Elliot threw himself into work, chopping wood and mending fences with a ferocity that worried Lila. "You're going to break something if you keep this up," she said one afternoon, her hands on her hips as she watched him swing an axe. "I can't just sit here," Elliot snapped, his breath heavy. "He's my brother, Lila. I let him down." "You didn't let him down," she said, stepping closer. "You stood up for him. But you can't fix this alone. Caleb needs time, and so does your dad." Nathan, meanwhile, was grappling with his own turmoil. Grace noticed the way he stared out the window during dinner, his fork hovering over untouched food. "Talk to me," she said one night, her voice gentle but firm. "You're not yourself." Nathan sighed, running a hand over his buzz cut. "I keep thinking about Caleb, about what Dad said. I don't know what's right anymore." Grace reached for his hand. "Right is loving your brother, no matter who he loves. You know that in your heart." But Samuel's voice echoed in Nathan's mind, a constant reminder of duty and tradition. He'd grown up idolizing his father, striving to be the son who made him proud. Now, that image was cracking, and Nathan didn't know how to piece it together. Back in Nashville, Caleb threw himself into his art, sketching scenes of Willow Creek from memory, the barn, the sycamore, his brothers' faces. Jamie encouraged him to submit his work to a local gallery, and to Caleb's surprise, they accepted. The night of the exhibition, Caleb stood among strangers, his heart pounding as people admired his sketches. Jamie beamed beside him, his pride a quiet strength. "You're incredible," Jamie whispered, squeezing Caleb's hand. "This is who you are." But even as Caleb smiled, a part of him longed for his brothers to see this moment, to know he was still the same Caleb who'd drawn wildflowers in their childhood. He sent Elliot and Nathan an invitation to the gallery, a small olive branch across the divide. He didn't expect them to come. To his shock, Elliot showed up, Lila at his side. "You didn't think I'd miss this, did you?" Elliot said, pulling Caleb into a bear hug. Lila admired a sketch of the sycamore tree, her eyes misty. "This is home," she said softly. "You carry it with you." Nathan didn't come, but he sent a text, "Proud of you, Kel. I'm sorry I'm not there." It was small, but it was something, a crack in the wall between them. The gallery night was a turning point for Caleb. He began to build a life in Nashville, finding a community that embraced him and Jamie. But the ache for his family never faded. He called Elliot weekly, their conversations a lifeline. Elliot shared stories of the farm, of Lila's new recipes, of the way the town was slowly changing. "Mrs. Harper's got a rainbow sticker on her library door now," Elliot said with a laugh. "Can you believe it?" But Samuel remained a shadow over everything. He refused to speak of Caleb, his silence a wound that festered. Elliot and Nathan tried to broach the subject, but Samuel shut them down. He made his choice, he'd say, his voice final. One evening, as Caleb and Jamie walked along the Cumberland River, Jamie stopped and turned to him. "I want to build something with you," he said, his eyes bright. "A home, a life. But I need to know you're all in." Caleb's heart swelled. He thought of the farm, of his brothers, of the father who'd turned him away. Then he looked at Jamie, whose love had given him the courage to be himself. "I'm all in," he said, and they kissed under the city lights, a promise sealed in the glow of a new beginning. Back in Willow Creek, a storm was brewing, both literal and figurative. A hurricane was forecast to hit Tennessee, and the farm was in its path. As Elliot and Nathan prepared, boarding windows and securing livestock, they couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at stake. The farm, their family, Their legacy all felt fragile, ready to break under the weight of unspoken truths. When the storm hit, it was merciless. Rain lashed the farm, and the sycamore tree groaned under the wind's assault. In the chaos, Samuel collapsed, clutching his chest. Elliot and Nathan rushed him to the hospital, their hearts pounding as they navigated flooded roads. At the hospital, the doctor's words were grim. Samuel needed surgery, and time was short. As they waited, Nathan pulled out his phone and called Caleb. "Dad's sick," he said, his voice breaking. "You need to come home." Caleb froze, the phone trembling in his hand. Jamie squeezed his shoulder. "Go," he said. "I'll be right behind you." The drive back to Willow Creek was a blur of rain and fear. Caleb's mind raced with memories of his father's laughter when they were kids, of his stern lectures, of the day he'd cast him out. Could he face Samuel again? Could he forgive him? When Caleb arrived at the hospital, he found Elliot and Nathan in the waiting room, their faces drawn. Elliot hugged him fiercely, and Nathan's eyes softened with relief. "I'm glad you're here," Nathan said, his voice thick. The doctor emerged, his expression grave. "Your father's stable, but it's serious. He's asking for you, all of you." Caleb's heart pounded as he followed his brothers into Samuel's room. Their father lay pale and frail, a stark contrast to the towering figure of their childhood. Samuel's eyes met Caleb's, and for a moment, the room was silent. "I was wrong," Samuel said, his voice barely a whisper. "I thought I was protecting you, but I was breaking us." Caleb's throat tightened. He wanted to be angry, to lash out, but all he felt was a deep, aching sadness. He took his father's hand, the first touch in months. "I just wanted you to love me," he said. "I do," Samuel said, tears in his eyes. "I always will." The storm outside raged on, but in that hospital room, a fragile peace settled over the brothers. They weren't whole yet, not by a long shot, but they were together. And for now, that was enough. Samuel's recovery was slow, and the hospital became a second home for the brothers. Caleb stayed in Willow Creek, renting a room at Mrs. Harper's bed and breakfast while Jamie returned to Nashville to manage their apartment. The distance between them felt like a test, but Jamie's daily calls and texts kept Caleb grounded. "You're doing the right thing," Jamie said one night, his voice crackling over the phone. "Your dad needs you, and so do your brothers." Caleb wasn't so sure. Samuel's apology had cracked open a door, but years of hurt didn't vanish overnight. Every visit to the hospital was a tightrope walk, moments of tentative connection interrupted by long silences. Samuel would ask about Caleb's art, his life in Nashville, but the conversations always circled back to the farm, to the life Caleb had left behind. "You could come back," Samuel said one afternoon, his voice weak but hopeful. "The farm needs you. We need you." Caleb's chest tightened. He loved the farm, the smell of fresh hay, the rhythm of the seasons, but it wasn't his home anymore. Not without Jamie. Not without acceptance. "I can't live a lie, Dad," he said quietly. "I won't." Samuel's face fell, but he nodded. "I'm trying, son. I am." Elliot and Nathan were caught in their own struggles. Elliot, now living with Lila in a small house near the farm, felt torn between loyalty to Caleb and the pull of family tradition. He spent hours repairing storm damage to the farm, his hands busy but his mind restless. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted to Lila one night, his voice raw. "Caleb's my brother, but Dad's my dad, and Nathan's stuck in the middle." Lila, ever practical, handed him a beer and sat beside him. You don't fix it by choosing sides. You fix it by showing up. For both of them. Nathan, meanwhile, was wrestling with his faith. Grace, who had grown up in the church, encouraged him to question the rigid beliefs he'd been taught. God is love, she said one Sunday after service, as they walked through the town square. If Caleb's love for Jamie is wrong, then what are we doing here? Nathan didn't have an answer. He'd always followed the path laid out for him. Marry Grace, work the farm, honor his father. But Caleb's courage had shaken something loose. He started reading, talking to Mrs. Harper, who lent him books on theology and acceptance. Slowly, he began to see his brother in a new light, not as a sinner, but as a man who loved fiercely and honestly. In Willow Creek, the storm's aftermath brought the community together. Neighbors helped rebuild fences and clear debris, and the town's divide over Caleb's disownment began to shift. Mrs. Harper organized a book club at the library, choosing novels with queer characters to spark conversation. To everyone's surprise, a few of Samuel's old friends showed up, their curiosity outweighing their discomfort. Caleb, meanwhile, found solace in sketching the town, its cracked sidewalks, its weathered storefronts, its people. He drew Mrs. Harper laughing with a group of teens, Elliot hauling lumber, Nathan and Grace walking hand in hand. Each sketch was a love letter to the place he'd once called home, and a way to process the pain of being cast out. One afternoon, Elliot invited Caleb to the farm to help with repairs. "Dad's still weak," he said, "but he'd like to see you." "No pressure." Caleb hesitated, but Jamie's voice echoed in his mind. "You're doing the right thing." He agreed, and for the first time in months, he stepped onto the farm's familiar soil. The sycamore tree, battered but still standing, greeted him like an old friend. Elliot clapped him on the shoulder, and they worked side by side, mending a broken fence. Nathan joined them, quieter than usual, but his presence felt like a step forward. When Samuel emerged from the house, leaning on a cane, Caleb's heart skipped a beat. "You boys look good together," Samuel said, his voice gruff but warm. It wasn't an apology, but it was an olive branch. Caleb nodded, unsure how to respond, and kept working. That evening, over dinner at Mrs. Harper's, Caleb shared his sketches with Elliot and Nathan. "These are incredible," Nathan said, his voice soft with awe. He lingered on a drawing of the three brothers as kids, chasing fireflies under the sycamore. "I miss this," he admitted. "Me too," Caleb said, his throat tight. "But I can't go back to hiding who I am." Elliot reached across the table, gripping Caleb's hand. "You don't have to. We're your family, too." The moment was interrupted by a call from the hospital. Samuel had taken a turn for the Warsi complication from his surgery. The brothers rushed to his side, fear knotting their stomachs. In the sterile hospital room, Samuel looked smaller than ever, his breathing shallow. "I'm proud of you boys," he said, his voice barely audible. "All of you. I wasn't always good at showing it." Caleb's eyes burned. He wanted to believe his father, but the years of rejection loomed large. Still, he took Samuel's hand, feeling the frail weight of it. "We're here, Dad," he said. "All of us." As the night wore on, the brothers sat together, sharing stories of their childhood pranks they'd pulled, summers under the sycamore, their mother's laughter in old photographs. For the first time in years, they felt like a family again, even if it was just for a moment. But Samuel's condition worsened, and the doctor's prognosis was grim. "He may not make it through the week," she said. The words hit like a thunderclap, forcing the brothers to confront the fragility of their reconciliation. Caleb knew he had to call Jamie. He couldn't face this alone. When Jamie arrived, he brought a quiet strength that steadied Caleb. Samuel, seeing them together, managed a weak smile. "You found a good one," he said to Caleb, his voice breaking. "Hold on to him." The words were a gift, fragile and hard one. Caleb nodded, tears streaming down his face. As the brothers stood vigil, the hospital room became a space of healing, not complete, not perfect, but real. The storm had torn them apart, but it had also brought them back together, forcing them to face the truths they'd buried. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the first stars appeared in the Tennessee sky. Caleb looked at his brothers, Jamie, at the father who was trying to make amends. He didn't know what the future held, but for now, he was home. Samuel's condition stabilized, but the doctors warned that his recovery would be long and uncertain. The brothers took turns staying at the hospital, their lives orbiting around their father's bedside. Caleb felt the weight of every moment, torn between hope and the lingering pain of their fractured past. Back at Mrs. Harper's, Caleb and Jamie carved out moments of normalcy. They cooked dinner together, laughed over bad TV, and sketched side by side Jamie's bold, colorful abstracts contrasting with Caleb's delicate, detailed landscapes. But the hospital loomed large, and Caleb's heart ached with every visit. Elliot, ever the optimist, tried to keep the family's spirits up. He brought board games to the hospital, coaxing reluctant smiles from Samuel and Nathan. Lila joined them, her warmth a balm for the tension. "We're gonna get through this," she said one evening, passing out slices of her homemade apple pie. Together, Nathan was quieter, his faith still a tangle of questions. He'd started attending a new church in town, one that welcomed everyone, regardless of who they loved. Grace went with him, her hand steady in his. "I'm learning," he told Caleb one night, his voice low. "I want to understand you better. I want to be better." Caleb nodded, his throat tight. "That means more than you know." In Willow Creek, the community was healing, too. The storm had left scars, fallen trees, damaged homes, but it had also sparked change. Mrs. Harper's book club grew, drawing in unlikely members, including some of Samuel's old friends. They read stories of love and struggle, and slowly, the town's heart began to shift. A rainbow flag appeared in the window of the local coffee shop, a quiet statement of solidarity. Caleb's sketches became a bridge between his old life and his new one. He started a project, drawing portraits of Willow Creek's residents, farmers, teachers, kids playing in the park. He included Jamie in one, capturing the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. When he showed the sketch to Samuel, his father studied it for a long time. "He's good for you," Samuel said finally, his voice rough. "I see that now." Caleb's heart swelled, but he couldn't ignore the years of pain. "Why did it take this long?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why did you push me away?" Samuel's eyes filled with tears. "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared of what I didn't understand. Scared of losing you to a world I didn't know. I was wrong, Caleb. I'm sorry." The apology wasn't a cure, but it was a start. Caleb nodded, unable to speak, and squeezed his father's hand. As spring bloomed, the farm began to recover. Elliot and Nathan worked tirelessly, planting new crops and repairing the barn. Caleb joined them when he could, the physical labor grounding him. One afternoon, as they rested under the sycamore, Elliot turned to Caleb. "You ever think about coming back? For good?" Caleb looked at the tree, its branches budding with new life. "Part of me wants to," he said. "But my home's with Jamie now. I can't leave that behind." Elliot nodded, understanding. "Then we'll come to you. Nashville's not that far." Nathan, listening quietly, added, "I want to meet Jamie properly. Maybe we can all have dinner sometime." The idea felt like a dream, but Caleb clung to it. He imagined his brothers at his apartment, laughing with Jamie, sharing stories. It wasn't the farm, but it was family. When Samuel was discharged, the brothers brought him home. The farm felt different now, less like a fortress, more like a place where healing could begin. Samuel moved slowly, leaning on a cane, but his eyes were brighter. He asked Caleb to show him more sketches, and for the first time, they talked about art, about love, about the future. Jamie visited on weekends, his presence a quiet revolution in Willow Creek. Some neighbors stared, but others welcomed him, offering coffee and small talk. Mrs. Harper invited him to the book club, and to Caleb's surprise, Jamie fit right in, his warmth disarming even the skeptics. One evening, as the brothers sat on the porch, Samuel joined them, a rare occurrence. He looked at Caleb, then at Elliot and Nathan. "I raised you boys to be strong," he said. "But I didn't teach you how to love. You're doing that on your own." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Caleb felt Jamie's hand in his, steady and warm. Elliot clapped Nathan on the shoulder, and Nathan smiled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Caleb realized that family wasn't just the farm or the sycamore or the father who'd once turned him away. It was the love they were building, piece by piece, through apologies and forgiveness, through courage and hope. But the road to healing was far from over. Samuel's health remained fragile, and the town's acceptance was uneven. Caleb knew there would be more challenges, more moments of doubt. Yet, as he looked at his brothers, Jamie, at the life they were carving out together, he felt something he hadn't in years: peace. The sycamore stood tall against the horizon, its roots deep and unyielding. Like the brothers, it had weathered the storm and it was still standing. Summer arrived in Willow Creek, bringing warmth to the fields and a tentative hope to the family. Samuel's health improved, though he tired easily, and the brothers took on more responsibility for the farm. Caleb split his time between Nashville and Willow Creek, balancing his life with Jamie and his desire to rebuild with his family. In Nashville, Caleb's art career blossomed. His sketches were featured in another gallery show, and this time, both Elliot and Nathan attended. Lila and Grace came too, their presence a quiet show of support. Nathan lingered over a drawing of the sycamore tree, its branches heavy with summer leaves. "You've got a gift, Kel," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." Caleb smiled, his heart lighter. "You're here now. That's what matters." Jamie, ever the anchor, helped Caleb navigate the whirlwind of his growing success. They talked about the future: buying a house, maybe adopting a dog. But Caleb couldn't shake the pull of Willow Creek, the need to mend what was broken. Jamie saw it in his eyes. "You need to be there," he said one night, as they sat on their balcony overlooking the city. "Your family's part of you. I'll be with you, wherever you are." In Willow Creek, the farm was thriving, thanks to Elliot's hard work and Nathan's careful planning. But the town's progress was slower. While some embraced change, others clung to old prejudices. At a town hall meeting, a group of residents pushed back against the library's rainbow flag, calling it divisive. Mrs. Harper stood firm, her voice steady. "This town is for everyone," she said. "If you can't see that, you're the ones dividing us." Caleb, who'd attended the meeting with Jamie, felt a surge of pride. He spoke up, his voice shaking but clear. "I grew up here. This is my home, too. And I'm not going anywhere." Jamie squeezed his hand, and for the first time, Caleb felt like he belonged not just to the farm, but to the town. Elliot and Nathan were there, too, standing beside Caleb. Elliot's presence was a quiet threat to anyone who dared challenge his brother, while Nathan's calm support spoke volumes. The meeting ended with no resolution, but the brothers felt a sense that they were stronger together. Back at the farm, Samuel was trying to change. He invited Jamie to dinner, a small but significant gesture. The meal was awkward, with stilted conversation and long silences. But Samuel asked Jamie about his art, his family, his life. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One afternoon, as Caleb helped Elliot repair a tractor, he noticed Nathan watching them, his expression troubled. "What's wrong?" Caleb asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Nathan hesitated, then spoke. "I've been reading, talking to people. I don't think love is a sin, Kel. I think I was wrong to stay silent when Dad kicked you out." Caleb's heart ached with relief. "You were doing what you thought was right," he said. "But you're here now. That's enough." Nathan shook his head. "It's not enough. I want to make it right. I want you and Jamie to feel welcome here." The words sparked something in Caleb's vision of a future where he could bring Jamie to the farm without fear, where his brothers could visit Nashville without tension. It was a dream worth fighting for. As summer faded, the brothers planned a family barbecue, a chance to bring everyone together. Lila and Grace took charge, stringing lights and setting up tables under the sycamore. Samuel, still weak but determined, insisted on helping, carrying chairs despite his cane. Caleb and Jamie arrived with a tray of Jamie's famous cornbread, and for a moment, the farm felt whole again. The barbecue drew neighbors, friends, and even a few curious skeptics. Mrs. Harper brought her book club, and the coffee shop owner showed up with a rainbow-themed dessert. There were moments of tension whispers from those who still disapproved, but the laughter and music drowned them out. As the night wore on, Samuel stood, his voice steady despite his frailty. "I've made mistakes," he said, looking at Caleb. "I thought I knew what family meant, but I was wrong. Family is love, and I'm proud of my boys, all of them." The crowd fell silent, then erupted in applause. Caleb's eyes met Jamie's, and he felt a warmth he hadn't known was possible. Elliot and Nathan stood beside him, their presence a silent vow. The sycamore loomed above, its branches swaying in the evening breeze, a witness to their healing. But healing wasn't a straight line. There were still hard days, still arguments and doubts. Samuel's health faltered, and the town's acceptance was fragile. Yet, as Caleb looked at his family, his brothers, their wives, Jamie, his father, knew they were building something new, something stronger. The barbecue ended with a toast, glasses raised under the stars. "To family," Elliot said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "To love." Caleb clinked his glass against Jamie's, his heart full. The road ahead was long, but they were walking it together. And for the first time, he believed they could make it. Fall painted Willow Creek in shades of amber and crimson, and the farm buzzed with the harvest. Caleb spent more time in town, helping with the crops while juggling his art career in Nashville. The rhythm of farm life felt familiar, but the undercurrent of change was undeniable. Samuel's health was a constant concern, and the brothers worked together to keep the farm running while supporting their father. Caleb and Jamie's relationship deepened, their love a quiet strength amidst the chaos. They talked about marriage, about building a life that bridged Nashville and Willow Creek. But Caleb couldn't shake the fear that his father's acceptance was fragile, that one wrong step could unravel everything. Elliot noticed Caleb's tension. One crisp morning, as they loaded hay bales, he clapped Caleb on the shoulder. "You're carrying too much," he said. "Dad's trying. We all are. Let us help." Caleb sighed, his breath visible in the cool air. "I want to believe it's real, but I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." Elliot nodded, his eyes steady. "It might, but we're your brothers. We've got your back." Nathan, too, was making strides. He and Grace started a small group at their new church, a space for open conversations about faith and identity. To Caleb's surprise, a few of Samuel's old friends attended, their curiosity outweighing their reservations. Nathan's growth was slow but steady, and Caleb felt a flicker of hope that their bond could be rebuilt. In Nashville, Caleb's art was gaining attention. A local magazine featured his sketches, calling them a love letter to rural America. The article mentioned his identity as a gay man, and Caleb braced for backlash. To his relief, the response was overwhelmingly positive, with letters and emails pouring in from readers who saw themselves in his work. But Willow Creek was a different story. The article sparked heated debates at the town diner, with some praising Caleb's courage and others muttering about city values invading their home. Samuel, reading the article at Mrs. Harper's, was quiet for a long time. "You're making waves, son," he said finally. "I'm proud, but it scares me." Caleb's heart sank. "Scares you how?" Samuel rubbed his temple, his face lined with worry. "This town's changing, and I don't know if I can keep up. But I'm trying. For you." The words were honest, raw, and Caleb clung to them. He invited Samuel to his next gallery show, a bold move. To his shock, Samuel agreed, promising to make the trip to Nashville with Elliot and Nathan. The night of the show was electric. Caleb's sketches lined the walls, capturing the beauty and pain of his life: the sycamore, the farm, Jamie's smile. Samuel walked slowly through the gallery, leaning on his cane, his eyes lingering on each piece. When he reached a portrait of the three brothers as kids, he stopped, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't know," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know how much you carried." Caleb took his father's hand, his own eyes wet. "I just wanted you to see me." "I see you now," Samuel said, pulling Caleb into a hug. Elliot and Nathan joined them, a circle of family in the crowded gallery. Jamie watched from a distance, his smile warm and proud. The moment was a turning point, but it didn't erase the challenges. Back in Willow Creek, a group of residents organized a petition to remove the library's rainbow flag, calling it a symbol of division. Mrs. Harper refused to back down, and the brothers rallied behind her. Elliot spoke at a town hall, his voice steady. "My brother's not dividing us. Hate is, and I won't stand for it." Nathan, too, found his voice. He shared his journey of unlearning prejudice, his words resonating with those who'd been silent. The petition failed, but the tension lingered, a reminder that change was a battle. As winter approached, Samuel's health took another dip. The brothers spent Christmas at the farm, a quiet affair with Lila's cooking and Grace's carols. Jamie joined them, his presence now a fixture rather than a surprise. Samuel gave Caleb a small, wrapped box a sketchbook from their mother. One she'd used when she was pregnant with the triplets. "She'd be proud of you," Samuel said, his voice thick. "All of you." Caleb held the sketchbook, his pages worn but precious. He thought of his mother, of the love she'd poured into her art, into her boys. He wondered what she'd think of him now, of the man he'd become. That night, as snow fell outside, the brothers sat by the fire, Jamie at Caleb's side. They talked about the future, Elliot and Lila's plans for a family, Nathan and Grace's new church group, Caleb and Jamie's dreams of a home together. Samuel listened, his smile tired but genuine. The sycamore stood outside, its branches bare but strong. Caleb looked at it through the window, feeling its roots in his bones. He was still finding his place, still navigating the space between Willow Creek and Nashville, between his past and his future. But he wasn't alone anymore. As the fire crackled, Caleb leaned into Jamie, his brother's laughter filling the room. Family wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And for now, that was enough. Winter settled over Willow Creek, blanketing the farm in snow and quiet. Samuel's health stabilized, but the cold months were hard on him, and the brothers took turns checking in. Caleb's visits were bittersweet, each moment with his father a step toward healing, each silence a reminder of the years lost. In Nashville, Caleb and Jamie were planning their future. They found a small house with a backyard big enough for a garden, a place to build their life together. Caleb's art was selling steadily, and Jamie's paintings were gaining traction, too. They dreamed of a wedding, but Caleb hesitated, unsure if his family would embrace it. Elliot and Lila were expecting their first child, a joy that lit up the farm. Nathan and Grace were talking about starting a family, too, their plans woven with hope and faith. But Caleb's absence during the holidays weighed on them all. "You should invite him and Jamie for New Year's," Lila told Elliot, her hand resting on her growing belly. "Make it official." Elliot agreed, and he called Caleb with the invitation. "Bring Jamie," he said. "We want you both here. Dad does, too." Caleb's heart raced. He wanted to believe it, but doubt lingered. Jamie, ever the optimist, packed their bags. "Let's give it a chance," he said. "Your family's trying. That's something." New Year's Eve at the farm was warm and chaotic, with neighbors and friends filling the house. Lila's cooking drew cheers, and Grace led a sing-along by the fire. Samuel, stronger now, greeted Jamie with a handshake and a quiet, "Good to see you." It wasn't effusive, but it was progress. As midnight approached, the brothers stepped outside, their breath clouding in the cold air. The sycamore loomed against the starry sky, its branches a silent witness to their lives. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you," Nathan said to Caleb, his voice low. "I should have stood up sooner." Caleb shook his head. "You're here now. That's what counts." Elliot grinned, slinging an arm around both brothers. "We're the triplets, right? Unbreakable." The moment was cut short by a shout from inside. Samuel had collapsed again. The brothers rushed him to the hospital, the joy of the night replaced by fear. The doctor's diagnosis was grim. Samuel's heart was failing, and surgery was risky. "He's strong," the doctor said, "but he's not out of the woods." The brothers sat in the waiting room, their wives by their sides. Jamie held Caleb's hand, his presence a steady anchor. "He's fighting," Jamie said softly, "just like you." Caleb nodded, his throat tight. He thought of the sketchbook Samuel had given him, of the love his father was trying to show. He wanted more time to forgive, to understand, to rebuild. In Willow Creek, the community rallied. Mrs. Harper organized a fundraiser for Samuel's medical bills, and the coffee shop hosted a bake sale. Even those who'd opposed the rainbow flag pitched in, their actions speaking louder than their words. The town was changing, slowly but surely, and Caleb felt it in the small gesture: a nod from a neighbor, a smile from a stranger. Samuel pulled through the surgery, but his recovery was slow. The brothers took turns staying with him, their bond a lifeline. Caleb brought his sketchbook, drawing at Samuel's bedside. One day, Samuel reached for a sketch of the sycamore. "This tree's seen a lot," he said. "Like us." Caleb smiled, his heart full. "It's still standing." As spring approached, Caleb and Jamie made a decision. They'd get married in Willow Creek, under the sycamore tree. It was a bold choice, one that would test the town and their family. Caleb called Elliot and Nathan, his voice steady. "We're getting married. We want you there." Elliot whooped, his excitement infectious. "Hell yeah, we're there." Nathan was quieter, but his voice was warm. "I wouldn't miss it, Kel." Samuel, still weak, listened in silence. When Caleb told him, he took a deep breath. "I want to be there," he said. "I want to see my boy happy." The words were a gift, one Caleb hadn't dared hope for. He and Jamie began planning, their love a beacon through the uncertainty. Lila and Grace offered to help, diving into decorations and catering with enthusiasm. The town buzzed with the news, some supportive, others skeptical, but Caleb felt ready to face it all. As the wedding day approached, Caleb sketched the sycamore, imagining it adorned with lights and flowers. He thought of his brothers, his father, the town that was learning to love him back. The road wasn't easy, but it was theirs. And under the sycamore, they'd write a new chapter together. Spring bloomed in Willow Creek, and the farm came alive with color. Caleb and Jamie's wedding plans took shape, their vision of a ceremony under the sycamore tree becoming real. The brothers worked together to transform the farm, stringing lights and building an arch woven with wildflowers. Lila and Grace handled the details, their excitement infectious. But the town's response was mixed. While many embraced the wedding, others whispered their disapproval, their voices carrying the weight of old prejudices. At a town meeting, a group of residents argued against allowing the ceremony on the farm, calling it a mockery of tradition. Mrs. Harper shut them down, her voice sharp. "Love is tradition. If you can't see that, you're blind." Caleb felt the sting of the opposition, but he refused to back down. Jamie, ever steady, reminded him, "This is our day. No one can take that from us." Samuel's health remained fragile, but he was determined to attend the wedding. He spent hours with Caleb, sharing stories of their mother, of the farm's early days. "She'd have loved Jamie," Samuel said one afternoon, his eyes distant. "She had a heart big enough for everyone." Caleb clung to those words, a bridge to the mother he'd never known. He sketched her portrait from an old photo, imagining her smile at his wedding. The act felt like a blessing, a way to carry her with him. Elliot and Nathan threw themselves into the preparations, their support unwavering. Elliot built a wooden bench for the ceremony, carving the brothers' initials into the back. Nathan worked with Grace to organize a community potluck, inviting everyone to celebrate. "This is for you, Kel," Nathan said, his voice firm. "We're family, and we're doing this right." As the wedding day neared, Caleb and Jamie faced a new challenge. Jamie's parents, who lived in Atlanta, were hesitant to attend. They'd struggled with Jamie's identity, and the idea of a gay wedding in a small town felt like too much. Caleb saw the hurt in Jamie's eyes, and it mirrored his own. "Let's call them," Caleb said one night, his hand on Jamie's. "Together." The call was tense, but Caleb's quiet strength steadied Jamie. "We love each other," Jamie told his parents. "We want you there, but we're getting married either way." To their surprise, Jamie's mother softened, promising to come. His father remained silent, but it was a start. The wedding day dawned bright and warm, the sycamore tree aglow with morning light. The farm was transformed, with tables laden with food and flowers everywhere. Neighbors arrived, some with gifts, others with cautious smiles. Mrs. Harper wore a rainbow scarf, her defiance a beacon. Caleb stood under the sycamore, his heart pounding. Jamie walked toward him, his brown eyes bright with love. Elliot and Nathan stood as groomsmen, their pride evident. Lila and Grace sat in the front row, their hands clasped. Samuel, frail but present, sat beside them, his eyes wet with emotion. The officiant, a friend from Nashville, spoke of love's power to heal and unite. Caleb and Jamie exchanged vows, their words raw and honest. "You gave me a home," Caleb said, his voice breaking. "I'll spend my life loving you." Jamie smiled, tears in his eyes. "You're my family, Caleb. Always." As they kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers. Even those who'd hesitated clapped, caught in the moment's joy. Samuel stood, leaning on his cane, and hugged both grooms. "I'm proud of you," he whispered to Caleb. "Both of you." The reception was a blur of laughter, music, and dancing. Elliot and Nathan took turns toasting, their words full of love and humor. Jamie's mother danced with Caleb, her smile tentative but genuine. The town, for one night, felt like a family. But the peace was fragile. As the night wound down, a group of protesters gathered at the farm's edge, their signs harsh and judgmental. Elliot moved to confront them, but Caleb stopped him. "Let them be," he said. "This is our day." Jamie nodded, his hand in Caleb's. "They can't touch what we have." The brothers stood together, their wives by their sides, as the protesters eventually dispersed. Samuel watched from the porch, his face a mix of pride and sorrow. He knew the town's journey wasn't over, just as his own wasn't. As the stars came out, Caleb and Jamie danced under the sycamore, the tree's branches swaying above them. The farm, the town, the family, they were all changing, growing, healing. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And as Caleb held Jamie close, he knew they'd face whatever came next together. The weeks after the wedding were a whirlwind of joy and adjustment. Caleb and Jamie settled into their new house in Nashville, a cozy craftsman with a garden they tended together. But Willow Creek remained a part of Caleb, and he visited often, balancing his life between city and farm. Samuel's health held steady, and he took small steps toward acceptance. He invited Caleb and Jamie for Sunday dinners, awkward at first but growing easier with time. One evening, he pulled Caleb aside. "I'm learning," he said, his voice gruff. "It's slow, but I'm trying." Caleb nodded, his heart full. "That's all I ever wanted, Dad." Elliot and Lila welcomed their daughter, Emma, a bright-eyed girl who brought new life to the farm. Caleb and Jamie doted on her, their visits filled with laughter and baby cuddles. Nathan and Grace, inspired, began planning for their own family, their faith now rooted in love rather than judgment. The town continued to evolve. Mrs. Harper's Book Club grew, and the coffee shop's rainbow flag became a fixture. But tensions lingered. A local church split over the issue of inclusion, and some residents still avoided Caleb and Jamie. Yet, the brothers faced it together, their bond stronger than ever. Caleb's art became a platform for change. He started a series of portraits featuring queer residents of rural America, their stories woven into his sketches. The series gained national attention, with galleries in New York and Chicago reaching out. Caleb dedicated the project to Willow Creek, a love letter to the town that had shaped him. One day, Nathan called with news. The town was planning its first Pride event, a small festival organized by Mrs. Harper and the coffee shop owner. "We want you and Jamie to be there," Nathan said. "It's time." Caleb hesitated, memories of rejection flooding back. But Jamie's hand on his shoulder steadied him. "Let's do it," Jamie said. "For us. For them." The Pride event was modest but meaningful. A few booths, a rainbow banner, and a stage for local musicians. Caleb and Jamie arrived with Elliot, Nathan, Lila, and Grace, their presence a statement. Samuel came, too, leaning on his cane, his attendance a quiet revolution. As Caleb looked out at the crowd, neighbors, friends, even a few former skeptics, he felt a surge of hope. He took the stage, his voice steady. "This town raised me," he said. "It broke my heart, but it also taught me love. Thank you for being here, for choosing love." The crowd cheered, and Jamie pulled Caleb into a hug. Elliot and Nathan stood beside them, their pride evident. Samuel watched, his eyes bright with tears. "I see you, son," he whispered, too soft for anyone to hear. The festival ended with a community dance, the sycamore tree looming in the distance. Caleb and Jamie swayed together, their love a beacon. Elliot and Nathan joined them, their wives laughing beside them. The town wasn't perfect, but it was trying. Back at the farm, Samuel called the brothers together. "I'm not long for this world," he said, his voice steady despite his frailty. "But I want you to know I'm proud. You're better men than I was." Caleb's throat tightened. "You're still here, Dad. We've got time." Samuel smiled, a rare softness in his eyes. "Use it well, boys." As summer returned, Caleb and Jamie hosted a barbecue at their Nashville home, inviting the whole family. Elliot and Nathan brought their wives and Emma, and Samuel made the trip, his strength bolstered by love. The backyard was filled with laughter, music, and the scent of grilled corn. Caleb looked at his family, his brothers, their wives, his father, his husband, and felt a peace he'd never known. The sycamore was miles away, but its roots were in him, in all of them. They'd faced storms, heartbreak, and rejection, but they'd also found love, forgiveness, and hope. As the sun set, Caleb raised a glass. "To family," he said, his voice strong. "To love." The clink of glasses echoed in the warm air, a promise of better days. The journey wasn't over, but they were together. And that was everything. The years passed, and Willow Creek grew into a place of quiet transformation. Caleb and Jamie's home in Nashville became a hub for family gatherings, a place where love was celebrated without fear. The farm, now managed by Elliot and Nathan, thrived, its fields a testament to the brothers' resilience. Samuel's health declined steadily, but he faced it with grace. He spent his days with his granddaughter, Emma, teaching her the names of wildflowers and telling her stories of the sycamore tree. Caleb visited often, his sketches capturing these moments, Samuel's weathered hands, Emma's bright eyes, the farm's enduring beauty. One spring, Samuel called the brothers to his bedside. "I've made peace with my mistakes," he said, his voice weak but clear. "You boys taught me what love means. Don't ever stop." Caleb took his father's hand, tears streaming down his face. "We won't, Dad." Samuel passed that night, under the same starry sky that had witnessed their struggles and triumphs. The brothers buried him near the sycamore, a simple stone marking his place. The town came to pay their respects, their presence a testament to the change Samuel had embraced. In the years that followed, Caleb's art continued to inspire. His rural queer portrait series toured the country, sparking conversations in small towns and big cities alike. Willow Creek's Pride event grew, becoming a regional celebration. Mrs. Harper, now in her 70s, passed the torch to a new generation, but her rainbow scarf remained a symbol of hope. Elliot and Lila welcomed a second child, a boy named Samuel, while Nathan and Grace adopted a daughter, Mia. The cousins grew up under the sycamore, their laughter echoing through the farm. Caleb and Jamie, content in their Nashville home, adopted a Doga scruffy mutt named Sycamore and began fostering queer youth, offering them the acceptance Caleb had once craved. The brothers remained close, their bond forged through hardship and love. They met under the sycamore every summer, sharing stories and dreams. Nathan's faith had evolved, his church a haven for all. Elliot's strength anchored the family, his love for Lila and their children a constant. Caleb and Jamie's marriage was a beacon, their love a reminder that family could be chosen, built, and cherished. One evening, as the brothers sat under the sycamore, Caleb pulled out his sketchbook. He'd drawn them as they were now older, wiser, together. "This is us," he said, passing it to Elliot and Nathan. "This is home." Elliot grinned, his eyes misty. "Unbreakable, right?" Nathan nodded, his hand on Caleb's shoulder. "Always." As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of gold, Caleb felt his mother's presence, his father's love, the strength of his brothers. The sycamore stood tall, its roots deep in the Tennessee soil, a witness to their journey. They'd faced rejection, fear, and loss, but they'd also found forgiveness, courage, and love. The farm, the town, the family, they were all part of Caleb's story, a story of breaking free and coming home. And as the stars emerged, Caleb leaned back, Jamie's hand in his brother's by his side. The sycamore whispered in the breeze, a promise of roots and wings, of love that endured. They were three brothers, born on the same day, bound by a love that had weathered every storm. And in that love, they found their forever. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.